Celebrating 42 seasons on the air, Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension. Today on Farm Week, a follow-up on that second deer found in Mississippi with chronic wasting disease. An expert answers the question, could it affect humans?
The EPA renews Dicamba for another 2 years, but there are changes on its use.
Okra, it's not just your grandmother's vegetable, it's a garden centerpiece.
And ranchers who won a court case still fighting the government for control of their land. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everybody, I'm Mike Russell.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for joining us today on Farm Week. Regardless of party, trade remains a top issue for farmers and ranchers. The U.S. has already abandoned the buying power of 500 million people and a combined GDP of $13.5 trillion by exiting the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Paul Yeager has the story.
For the first time in 3 decades, U.S. farmers planted more soybeans than corn. As the nation's soybeans come in from the field and head for the bins, U.S. farmers are left to wonder where their product will end up. This chart from USDA reveals a dramatic fall-off in U.S. soybean export sales to China. It's traditionally the largest buyer of domestic beans. The peak came in the fall of 2017 at more than 2,000 metric tons. Sales to China over the last 7 weeks combined failed to equal a single week of last fall's soybean sales. Thursday morning, Presidents Trump and Xi talked on several topics, including trade. The soybean market immediately bumped up 25 cents. Overall, soybeans are only a small part of the trade puzzle. The U.S. still sees intellectual property as a major sticking point between the two countries. During a White House event Wednesday, President Trump reiterated the U.S. economy was growing on his watch and how he is committed to reworking trade deals.
They've taken advantage of us on trade. They've taken our money, they've taken our jobs, and we're stopping that. And we have to take care of, I have the expression, America first. And the fact is we have to start taking care of our own country.
The president continued to say China's economy is softening. China's manufacturing activity fell to a 2-year low in October as domestic demand weakened. The official Chinese government report added to the building pressure for a trade agreement with the United States. However, most of the Asian giant's economic challenges may be tied to slumping auto and real estate sales. Beijing tightened lending controls last year to help rein in a debt boom. China's Xi met with his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe late last week as the two countries look to find common economic interests. Abe told the group they need to develop a new level of a free and fair trade system. Earlier this fall, the U.S. and Japan agreed to launch bilateral trade talks. Japan carries the 3rd largest trade imbalance with the U.S. after China and Mexico. For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
In other news, recently we reported that a second deer in Mississippi had tested positive for chronic wasting disease, CWD, though in Pontotoc County, about 175 miles away from the first report in Issaquena County several months ago. Scientists say the neurological disorder, which involves certain proteins in the nervous system, is 100% fatal. Because of the way it affects its victims, some have made comparisons to mad cow disease, especially the 1996 outbreak in the UK, in which the disease jumped to humans, killing more than 150 people and leading to a lengthy export ban on British beef. I spoke to Dr. Bronson Strickland, wildlife specialist at Mississippi State University Extension. I asked him, is there any cause for alarm? Could CWD jump to humans?
That is a really complicated question in terms of the potential impacts on humans. And so I think the way we have to frame it is, in some parts of the United States, this disease has been around for 30 years. 40 years, some places 50 years. And hunters, inadvertently, I'm sure, consumed a lot of infected venison. There has never been a documented case of cause and effect of a human being contracting the human form of CWD, a neurological disorder. The other end of that question, though, would be someone like the CDC, who would say, just because we've never found a case, we cannot assure everyone that it's not possible. And so what they recommend is to use caution. They recommend that if you want peace of mind and you want to be absolutely safe, have your deer tested. And then if it comes back positive for CWD, don't consume the meat.
If you'd like to know more about CWD or the sampling process and locations in Mississippi, visit online at mdwfp.com.
As you may have heard, the EPA has renewed the weed killer Dicamba for another 2 years. The decision came just a few days ago following a 2017 ban on Dicamba use by Arkansas and Missouri. The ruling clears the way for farmers to keep using the popular herbicide despite the claims by some of damage from drift. There will be some changes, though. According to the EPA, only certified applicators will be able to apply Dicamba over the top, and there are restrictions on how that's to be accomplished. U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue released a statement on the renewal. In part, he said, "This represents the conclusion of a very thorough scientific review in conjunction with stakeholders involving site visits and careful consideration of facts. Producers who use this weed control method should review the label, understand why changes have been made."
Mississippi farmers who suffered production losses in 2017 from Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Nate have just a few days to sign up for that help from the USDA's Farm Service Agency. It's all part of something called WIP, the 2017 Wildfire and Hurricane Indemnity Program. Hurricane Harvey hit late August of 2017. Hurricane Nate hit less than 2 months later. It was the first tropical cyclone to move ashore in Mississippi since Katrina in 2005. WIP is intended to help producers offset losses to crops and trees from those and other natural disasters. The deadline to sign up is Friday, November 16th. For information on how to do that, visit online at the USDA's new website, farmers.gov. Or you can call your local Farm Service Agency for help on that as well. A disaster declaration is not needed for wildfire losses, and those losses include mudslides resulting from the effect of the fires.
In many parts of the world, they're known as lady's fingers. Okra, though, as we know it, isn't just a traditional southern dish. For many, it's also a staple in the garden. So what to do with that little wagon wheel veggie? Here's horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman with the answer.
I really like to grow this vegetable in my edible home landscape. If you don't already know, this is okra. Southern gardening is at Truck Crops in Crystal Springs, and I'm loving the okra trials. Okra is a plant that's synonymous with vegetable lovers in the South, but it evolved in Northern Africa, and it's believed the first okra seeds were brought to North America by African slaves. The okra flower is gorgeous, and it's obvious that it's a cousin of our garden hibiscus. The flower color is a nice creamy yellow, and all of them have a deep reddish purple throat. The fruit are classified as a pentagon-shaped capsule up to 8 inches long. Growing up, I always wondered what those little wagon wheels were in the vegetable soup. The leaves add a coarse texture to the garden, and they're big, more than 8 inches in diameter. The leaves are palmately lobed, some being broad and others deeply cut. There are a lot of great varieties, but I like 2 heirloom selections. Clemson's Spineless, an All-America selection in 1939, are vigorous plants producing dark green grooved pods. The other is Hill Country Red, I just love the big, fat, reddish green pods. The plants also have red stems that add that pop of color. When your okra begins to produce, watch it every day as the pods grow very quickly. I always harvest them while they're tender and about 3 inches long. Whether you like okra in gumbo, pickled, or like me, fried, this is a great plant to put into your edible landscape. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and I'll see you next time on Southern Gardening.
Time now for the markets with Leighton. Enjoy any okra lately?
Well, as a matter of fact, last weekend I had some good vegetable soup with okra. And I'm with Gary, fried okra. That can't be beat.
Oh, we call it Southern popcorn at my house.
Okay. Whatever you call it, it's good.
It is.
Well, from hot soup, we move into the markets this week, and we transition to some jittery markets. Export season is almost over for soybeans, and the China situation drags on. Two big trends emerge from the cattle on feed report as new cases of African swine fever are reported in China. As we record, cotton is described by some as trading in a holding pattern this first full week of the month. The midterm elections are seen as one factor at play, but several others are on the table as well. Analysts note the trade war is still weighing on cotton prices. But in a positive development, there are reports of a very good phone conversation between President Trump and China's president a week ago. Meanwhile, the trade generally anticipated that the USDA will lower the size of the U.S. cotton crop in the new Ag Supply Demand report. Of course, the Chinese tariffs are impacting many commodities. Trade reports continue to show a big drop in imports of U.S. soybeans by China, the biggest in 12 years. Analyst Ted Seifert says there are other factors impacting bean prices too, but China is the main one.
This is not getting better. The situation with China is not getting better. So I think the soybean market is kind of resigning itself to that notion. You know, I think we will at some point start to put some hope back into the market on the idea that President Trump and President Xi plan to sit down at the G20 meeting in Buenos Aires on November 20th. President Trump has had a very good track record of sitting down with world leaders and getting things done, making friends, really. He's much better at making friends in person than he is on Twitter, apparently. So at some point, I think that the market will start to rekindle that hope. I think there's still upside potential for soybeans.
Ted says if there's not a trade agreement between the U.S. and China by January or February, the soybean sector could run into major problems, as he put it. And it will be happening as American farmers are getting ready to plant the 2019 crop.
South America's crop looks good, and especially if it looks really very good. Wow, things could get really nasty as soybeans really try to ditch as many acres as they possibly can. So before we get into planting, if we don't have a better situation than what we're looking at right now, soybean prices could get really ugly.
Well, nothing ugly about this week's trivia quiz. Let's look now. It's about the beef sector in this country. How many U.S. cattle farms and ranches are operated by women? Is the answer A, 5%, B, 11%, C, 18%, or D, 26%? We'll give you the answer in a few more minutes.
We'll take a break right here, but coming up on our Farm Week feature, a story about land and history, but one where the history now doesn't seem to carry as much weight. It's a battle between ranchers and the federal government. In New Mexico, ranchers won a court case against the U.S. Forest Service, but they've been fenced out of some of their land in a battle over water rights. It's a tangled web, a standoff between environmentalism and land use. That's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
At Mississippi State University, Extension is reaching beyond the college campus and impacting adult education. We're instructing agricultural professionals on the latest trends in research and technology, inspiring communities, empowering small businesses, and promoting the growth of healthy families where youth and adults can reach their fullest potential.
The MSU Extension Service, sharing our vision for the future.
Before we get back to the market report, let's take a look at the Farm Week calendar. First, the MSU Row Crop Short Course, December 3rd through the 5th at the Cotton Mill Conference Center in Starkville. This conference is packed with presentations on entomology, plant pathology, ag economics, and more. Registration is free before November 27th and includes all meals, snacks, and drinks. Full information is online at extension.msstate.edu or call Kathy Johnson at 662-325-2701. Next, from January 8th through the 10th in New Orleans, it's the Beltwide Cotton Conferences. This is another packed convention on current research and emerging technology to improve production, processing, and marketing efficiency. Conferences include cover crop initiatives, new products, pest management, just to name a few. For more info and to register, visit the conference website at cotton.org/beltwide. Now, check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
The buildup of U.S. protein supplies due to trade issues has meant more featuring of beef and pork by both retailers and food service operators, and is said to be luring customers away from chicken. A Pilgrim's Pride executive says he expects the trade impact, though, to ease some moving into 2019 as domestic protein supplies are reduced. Well, after looking further at the recent Cattle on Feed report, Extension's Josh Maples has come to a conclusion. He thinks the short-term impact of the numbers is a stronger feeder market. Josh notes two big trends that should make this a reality.
The big one is this continued placement of lower weight calves. And that happened even through September. So if we look, we talked about the lower placements number. Really, that lower placements number was driven by lower placements of calves weighing 700 pounds or more. The calves weighing less than that were still very strong. And so that piece, also the continued strong placements of heifers. So we're looking at heifers are up about 11% over last year on feed. Steers are only up about 2%. So we've got more heifers in the mix too. Both of these things lead to lower placement weights and ultimately lower slaughter weights.
Now, marketings were down too in this report. Any reason that there should be concern about that, lower marketing?
Yes, marketings were down about 3.6%. This was very well anticipated, so that's why you're not going to see a big market reaction to this, but it is a number to keep an eye on. Beef demand is going to be what's important to work through these large supplies of cattle. So I'm not concerned yet, but it's certainly something that we should keep an eye on moving forward.
The hog market continues to keep its eye on the potential impact of more cases of African swine fever in China. There are 50 so far, with new cases, it seems, added each week. Naomi Bloom says an increase in U.S. market prices is at least partly due to the many unknowns about ASF.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest part of it. And then what we had this week, the cold storage report showed that the numbers were down from last year, and so that was supportive as well. And it's the opposite for the hog market than the cattle market. So in the hog market, the futures are trading lower than where the cash is at. So the futures have also needed to start to come up as well. But the December contract is up against some overhead resistance on daily December charts. 60 is that resistance point. If we can get through there, you can see that market push, 4 to 5 higher pretty quick. Just more on technical buying from the future side of it. But we have to really get a better handle, even more so on the African swine fever, as we try to figure out, is it going to be affecting our exports, that we can actually export more overseas, and that's what we're going to be watching too.
Closing the markets with forestry products, a lumber mill in Ackerman, Mississippi now has a Canadian partner. Tolco Industries of British Columbia is now a 50-50 joint venture partner with Southeastern Timber Products. This is Tolco's second such investment in the United States. Time to wrap it up in the markets, and to do that, let's answer trivia for you. 11% of the cattle farms and ranches in the United States are operated by women. B is the right choice.
The old school fundamentals of land and water remain at the center of cattle production in what used to be the Old West, where many a range war was fought. There are still fights over resources in this rugged way of life, but how the battle is won depends on who's asking the questions.
Right here in this very spot, I got pictures of many elk in here, and they're saying, well, no, the elk don't do the damage, it's the cows. I know that's not true.
Spike Goss ranches on a federal grazing allotment in New Mexico's Sacramento Mountains, where the Sky Island's natural resources have provided generations a livelihood from the land. His chain of title stretches back to the late 1800s, but Goss fears his way of life is under attack.
My rights come long before New Mexico became a state, long before there was a U.S. Forest Service. But yet they won't recognize that.
More than 50 years ago, the land was federally designated part of the Sacramento Ranger District. The district covers about half the area of the over 1 million acre non-contiguous Lincoln National Forest.
Most allotment owners around here don't understand what's going on, I don't believe. After we're gone, they're coming next.
Goss believes a tangled web of old laws and newer regulations have been misinterpreted through policy over time, leaving split estate public land use fundamentally altered through sue and settle litigation.
They want our water. If they can get the water, they can control us. They have us. I mean, we're finished without water.
Goss's Sacramento Grazing Association pushed back against the federal government for decades before suing the U.S. Forest Service in 2004. But not until last year did a judge uphold Goss's assertion that fences erected by the Forest Service to safeguard critical riparian habitat fit the Fifth Amendment's definition of illegal takings by preempting stream access for his thirsty cattle. Goss says the federal agency has largely disregarded the court decision, but as the post-trial damages phase continues, USDA Forest Service officials told Market to Market they are unable to comment on the ruling.
They just started this year, putting these fences in the exclosures, these small fences in the exclosures.
So every drop is appreciated.
Beth Humphrey, a retired district ranger, says the agency is governed by a multiple-use policy that requires weighing input from several stakeholders, along with other tasks like fire prevention and wildlife management.
In general, if we fence out a piece of ground, it's to protect for threatened endangered species, or in some cases, we will fence off an area to protect erosive soils.
Over a century ago, the U.S. government incentivized Western expansion by allowing those who arrived first the right to own water and mineral rights, known today as prior appropriation. States east of the 100th meridian, flush with rain and snow, generally received riparian water rights.
Forest Service says we're a permittee. We're not permittees. We're allotment owners. We own our allotments. We bought it, and then we pay a grazing fee on top of that. And yes, in 1978, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that we own the water rights.
As Goss's case was being heard, the New Mexico meadow jumping mouse was granted endangered species protection, creating further friction between ranchers and rangers.
This is wasting our time. It's wasting your time. If you want this damn water, pay for it.
I don't want the water. Humphrey says the whole situation brought to mind recent high-profile standoffs over similar issues in Nevada and Oregon.
There were some outside interests who were trying to elevate the contention. We were concerned when that happened. We didn't know what to expect from some of the people that have that value system and that mindset about the federal government. There is an element of that here.
But Spike's wife, Kelly Goss, refutes those sentiments.
No, we will not resort to violence. This is not worth someone's life. This is our heritage, our way of life, our livelihood, what we want to pass down to our kids and our grandkids.
Critics charge the Forest Service has shifted to a more environmentally based vision, and mismanagement is evidenced by the increased number and severity of western wildfires.
I think we need to be honest and say that the land here has been overgrazed, and we need to really figure out a way to bring it back to its glory as what it used to be.
Water rights holders across the land of enchantment say environmental activists have deftly employed legal tools to further their causes, citing the Equal Access to Justice Act and other provisions that allow nonprofits to sue the federal government and recoup legal fees at taxpayer expense, if they win. But Wild Earth Guardian's executive director John Horning, instrumental in winning legal concessions for the mouse, says organizations like his take huge financial risks. Horning argues the margin of error for endangered species is too small for compromise and calls grazing an economically marginal activity, adding that cattle congregate around waterways, strip away vegetation, and send shock waves through ecosystems.
They just continue to take and take and take.
Some allotment owners believe career bureaucrats have used environmentalism to swing policy in their favor. The Gosses say they've endured pressure from the federal government across multiple administrations, but admit President Trump's campaign calls to drain the swamp resonated with them.
We hope. We haven't seen it yet, but we hope soon. We'd like for somebody back there to come out here and take a good hard look at this and look at our issues and listen to some stuff that's been going on and look at some of our documentation and mostly follow the law. I don't believe they're following the law at all.
For Market to Market, I'm Josh Bittner.
No easy answers in a story like that one. Always the potential for conflict, right?
That is absolutely right, Mike. And of course, the politics are getting trickier every day, it seems.
Absolutely are.
Well, next week we take a lighter approach to our feature story. We're getting off the highway once again with Zach Ashmore. This time, he's headed to Vicksburg for a look-see at the first place in the world where Coca-Cola was ever bottled. It's a surprising story about the real thing.
Also in Vicksburg, Zach tours Walnut Hills, an antebellum house that's home to authentic plantation cuisine. And the word is it's haunted. We're off the highway next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for the past episodes of Farm Week on our website, farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.